And then I try to unclip this guy, and this is very similar to any other fan. This should be able to be used on the fan. Hi everyone, welcome to our channel again. We have yet another repair that we are going to attempt. And this time, it is a fan that's inoperative. Now, many of these fans, sometimes we have a tendency that, okay, it's not working. Why? Because it's quite cheap to buy another one and just install it and get it running again. Today's video is actually to find out what is wrong with the fan, possibly an economical way to repair it. So, in this case, power supply is connected and you can see some response on the fan indicator light that turns on, which just tell me that the power is actually coming to the fan. And I have a remote control with me that can turn the fan on and off. Typically, what we would do is, in the case where there's no power supply coming, we would look at the wire and see whether there was any damage on it. Sometimes what we can do is, with the power on, we can shake the cord a little bit and see whether the power is restored to the fan. Sometimes it's just the cord or the supply itself that's not working. So take a look at the obvious steps first before going into the details. This can be applicable to a ceiling fan in which the operation is quite similar. Now check the control knob, rotate it a couple of times and see whether the fan responds. Sometimes you may feel that some of the switches or these control knobs are sticky or stuck. You may want to just rotate it or cycle it a little bit and see whether it works. Now, in that case, if we can ascertain that the power supply to the fan is available, then we have to proceed to the next step. We have to make sure that the power cord is disconnected before we even attempt to disassemble the fan. Now, first thing, remove the front grill. So once we pull on this cap, it will release the fan grill, the front grill. And then we slowly open it up. This is what the fan grill looks like. Once you've removed this, put it aside. Now then you come to the cap that is keeping the fan blade in place. Now, there are some indicators here to tell you whether to tighten and loosen in which direction. The tighten is in the opposite direction, in a clockwise direction. So this is opposite of the normal convention. So as you can see, I'm actually loosening the cap that's actually holding the fan blade. Okay, once I've loosened it sufficiently, put it aside because we need to reinstall again. Now, once we have this fan blade exposed, put your fingers behind here, two set of fingers, one set of finger at the top, and then pull the fan blade out. Once you pull the fan blade out, take it away, put it aside. The next part is to remove the back guardrail. It's a normal convention. You turn this nut anti-clockwise. Once you loosen it, okay, the back guard will come off. Keep this carefully. Remove the back guard, keep it aside. Now you have the motor exposed to some extent, but there's a cover to the motor. The motor is behind here. Another thing you could do is use your finger to rotate this and see whether is there any interference. Typically, there should be no interference. So the next step, now this may vary a little bit from fan to fan that you come across, but the basic process is still the same. You still need to remove the cover. Now there are 4 screws here. I'm going to unscrew to remove the front cover. Now it is quite useful to have a screwdriver that is magnetic to keep the screw from dropping and you losing it. So once you have removed 4 screws and the front cap, these 4 screws are actually holding the motor and the front cap together. Now, as you can see, there is a clip here in which it needs to be removed. That's where my test pen comes in, and then I try to unclip this guy a little bit. It's a bit difficult to unclip, so you have to be a little bit careful when you unclip this so that you don't break it. Now, you can see this cover coming out. Put it away. What you see now is the motor and the back cover. Slide the back cover out, keep it aside, and you will see that there is some part of the fan that is exposed. In many cases, the fans that I have come across, there is something called the capacitor, which is this little component over here that normally when you replace it, it is able to fix the fan. But before you disconnect anything, do an inspection of the capacitor, do an inspection of the wires, make sure nothing is disconnected, nothing is burned, everything looks normal, nothing unusual there. Now, the next step is to remove the capacitor. Now, there is a screw. If if you can see, that is holding the capacitor down. So I'm going to use a Phillips screwdriver, unscrew the capacitor, anti-clockwise again, all screws turn anti-clockwise. Now you can see my capacitor is out, and this is very similar to any other fan. I would say most of the fans that I've come across use something similar to this, only that the rating is a little bit different. Now, before you even attempt to remove any of these wires, you have a handphone with you, take a photo of it and make sure you know exactly which way to reconnect it. Okay, that way you won't make a mistake by connecting it in the wrong manner. If you need to do a bit of marking, go ahead and do it. Now, how do you disconnect this? Sometimes some of these connections come with this type of lock nut. If you can see, this is some sort of a wire nut in which it is compressed. You take in two wires, you twist them together, and then you use a plier and you squeeze this. That's one way. Another way of doing this, it's also called a wire nut, which looks something like this. It's orange in color. They have different sizes for these wire nuts. So if you want to purchase some of these from the hardware store, make sure you get the correct size. Now, once you have taken a photo, you can proceed to disconnect the capacitor. Hold the wire very carefully, unscrew the wire nut anti-clockwise, and then make sure you are able to keep the wires together so that they don't mix. Unscrew the other wire nut. This side is connected to this wire, and this wire is connected to this side. Okay, so very important for you to take note. Now, once you have done that, remove the capacitor. Okay, sometimes it's going to be a little bit challenging to do that. Now, I have removed the capacitor and it actually looks something like this. The first thing we need to do is take a look at the capacitor, whether on the exterior there is any issue with it, any damaged wires, any expansion of this casing, any bloatedness on this capacitor. It will give us indications of whether is this at fault. Now, there's another way to check the capacitor, whether it's functioning. Before we do any check, we have to short the capacitor. Basically, take these two wires, put them together. This will discharge whatever voltage there is in this capacitor. In order to check the functioning of this capacitor, we need to use a multimeter. This capacitor is rated at 1 microfarad. You can see here there's a micro symbol and then there's a farad here. We have to turn on the multimeter, switch it to the reading. Okay, what we're interested in is this symbol here with two lines going left to right and two lines vertical. Now, once you've done that, you select, select, and then you will see a F down here, which is a farad indication. Now, we take the two probes, and we connect it to the capacitor. Okay, just like that, simple as this. And then we take a reading. Alright, now what is the reading we are getting? We are getting something like around 249 something, 249 something microfarad. 250 now. Is this a number we are looking for? No, this is actually excessively high. What we are looking for is this. It should be around 1, but we are getting a value of 200 and something. So we should be looking at 1. This tells us that if these values that we get is excessively low or excessively high, means this capacitor is faulty. It should be thrown away, it shouldn't be kept. Now, when we replace, what we need to be looking for is this, the 1 microfarad plus or minus 5%. Make sure you have a 450 volt AC and a 50 to 60 Hertz. These are the parameters that we are more interested in. You can check online. With these three parameters, it's quite easy, quite inexpensive. You probably can get this for under $5. The role of the capacitor is something like a starter to kickstart the fan, to make sure that it starts to run. So let's go to the next step to see what a new capacitor would look like. I have spares that I keep with me. It's the same rating. I'm not sure whether you can see clearly. It's a 1 microfarad rating, 450 volt AC, 50 to 60 Hertz. Before I do a measurement, I make sure I short it, and then I will do a measurement, same thing as what I did with the earlier one, and see what value I get. Now, as you can see the reading, I'm actually getting 1 microfarad, which is indicating that it is a good capacitor. This should be able to be used on the fan. Now, let's proceed to do the next part of installing this on the fan assembly, and then we will do the test after that. Now, I brought the fan into the picture again. If you remember that we had removed the old capacitor. Now, please make sure that when you install the new capacitor, the orientation of the capacitor should be similar to the old one. With the same orientation, basically I put the left wire here and I twist it clockwise, and then I use a wire nut. Okay, this is the wire nut, the orange color one, and then I rotate it and then I tighten. So that is one connection. Do a quick pull check, not too hard. Okay, the second connection goes to this side, which is the other open connection. Twist the wire together, install a second wire nut, not too tight. Do a pull check, make sure your wires are connected properly, nothing exposed. Now we're going to do a test run of this fan and see, without assembling anything else, this shaft will actually rotate. Now we can turn on the switch now. I'm going to attempt to turn it on, and you can see now this shaft is rotating. Okay, which means that our troubleshooting was correct. So I'm going to turn it off, turn off the power supply before I touch anything else, reinstall the capacitor in the way it was earlier, the original Phillips screw that came with the earlier capacitor. Now always remember, whenever we tighten these screws, do not over tighten them, because we don't want to break the portion that is actually holding the capacitor down. Now put the wires in nice and snug. We don't want them to be sticking out, so that when we reinstall the cover, we can install it quite easily without the wires interfering. Once that is done, we have to take the cover, reinstall it in exactly the same manner, make sure it's sitting nicely. The second part of this is the top cover. Put it in and click it into place before you tighten the screws. You can hear the click sound and you know that the cover is in place. You will notice that the motor is not secure. The motor is secured by these 4 screws that we removed earlier. So align the motor carefully to at least one screw and install it. Do not tighten fully, because when you tighten fully, it does not give you the leeway to do some adjustment for the remainder holes. Just sufficiently install the screws to secure them. Once I've installed the last screw, we will tighten all of them, because we know that all the 4 screws are in place. Again, do not over tighten, you will break the casing or the cover. Perform an inspection, make sure the cover is nicely installed. The next part to this is we're going to install the back grille. So the back grille goes in. Please make sure you have the correct orientation. This handle is typically on the top of the fan, and these are some of the guiding pins that you will see. Now make sure these guiding pins are sitting nicely, and then the next part of it is to install the cap. Make sure it's not vibrating. And then the next part is the fan. There is a gap that you need to look out for. Now that gap on the blade needs to sit here. There are 2 little pins that are sticking out. Align it and make sure it is sitting nicely. You need to check at the back here to make sure the pins are sitting nicely in that slot. Then you have to install this nut. Follow the directions on the nut itself. To tighten is anti-clockwise. Do not force it, because if you were to force it, you will damage the threads of the nut. So once you've done that, rotate the fan. Make sure everything is good, nothing interfering. Once you've done that, we are going to proceed to install the top grille. Now the top grille has got a ring here. Make sure, check that the ring is sitting nicely first on the top grille. Now what do we do now? Same thing, follow the same orientation. Install the grille. Okay, make sure it's sitting nicely. You will hear a click sound. Check, make sure the grille is nice and even all around. So do a check all around, make sure there are no gaps, everything is locked in place. Now I'm going to do another final test, and now the power is on. I'm going to turn on using the remote. My fan is actually now operating. So let's increase the speed a little bit. You let it run a little bit. Okay, increase the speed a little bit. Okay, as you can see now, the fan is actually fully running and you can actually hear it running. Make sure there are no abnormal sounds, okay, coming from the fan. Make sure nothing is hitting anywhere. Okay, reduce the speed, turn it off. Okay, so now we have actually completed the repair of this fan. This is a very simple fix. Whether you want to proceed to do other troubleshooting with these type of fans, I don't think it's actually economically feasible for you to replace more than this capacitor. This capacitor is actually very cheap. You can get it under $5. The idea behind this repair is to make sure that you can extend the life of this fan at least for another year or so. You're actually stretching your dollar, and at the same time you are able to use your tools and get value for money when you buy your tools, and you actually make use of them. So thank you very much for watching our video. We look forward to seeing you in our next video. Please like and subscribe to our channel. Okay, and we'll see you in the next video. Thank you.